In part 1 we talked about where Lord Aurane Waters stands at the beginning of the Winds of Winter, and in part 2 we explored some of the allegiances he could be holding. We had some fun, but I don't think any of us were too convinced, so let's try to really figure out who Aurane Waters is, what motivates him, and what he's really up to. Cersei briefly speculates on Aurane's motives when thinking about who the Rosby lands should go to following Lord Gyle's death. Lord Waters, perhaps. Aurane had been hinting at his need for a seat. His lordship was only an empty honour without one. He had his eye on Dragonstone, Cersei knew, but there he aimed too high. Rosby would be more suitable to his birth and station. We don't get any reasoning on why Cersei thinks Aurane wants Dragonstone, but it would make a pinch of sense given his Valyrian ancestry. On the other hand, Cersei is a certified nutjob, so without any more evidence, we can't be certain of Aurane's goals. Cersei upholds her idiocy even in this quote, saying as giving Rosby to Aurane is just an awful idea, and giving him Dragonstone is far more sensible, considering that he's a naval leader with Valyrian ancestry. Of course, Cersei shouldn't be gifting Aurane any lands, as he hasn't done a single thing to prove his loyalty to her or the crown at this point, and really it would make the most sense to make him Master of Driftmark after Stannis is hypothetically defeated and Monterys Velaryon is dispossessed for being a traitor. This is some pretty fucking basic feudalism that Cersei fails at right here.
Oh my god! Why are you so stupid?
Obviously, Aurane isn't simply serving himself to acquire Dragonstone, or any other seat for that matter, as a gift from Cersei. If that were the case, he wouldn't have antagonized himself, taken the royal fleet, and left King's Landing. He would have stayed and supported her. But he didn't, because he knows her power is drawing thin, and maybe he has another monarch in mind. When we first see Aurane in A Clash of Kings, he is bending the knee to Joffrey, having been captured after the Battle of the Blackwater, in which he fought for Stannis Baratheon. Stannis and Aurane are distantly related, as House Baratheon probably formed as a cadet branch of House Targaryen by the bastard Orys Baratheon, whose grandson, wait for it, married a Velaryon. Actually, it was the same Velaryon from earlier, go figure. It turns out that Aurane is actually slightly more related to Stannis than Daenerys, incest notwithstanding. Jury's still out on Aegon though. Even if you do discard their distant shed blood, it makes sense that Aurane would initially fight for Stannis. Driftmark is sworn to Dragonstone, which Stannis had been lord of for nearly 2 decades. It's likely that Stannis has good relations with House Velaryon. We know that Aurane's half-brother Montford fought and died for King Stannis, and was present at a number of important events on Dragonstone. Aurane is only 22 in Feast, so he was just a toddler at the end of Robert's Rebellion when Stannis became Lord of Dragonstone. I would imagine he hardly even remembers Rhaegar, and Stannis is the only liege lord he's ever truly known. The main branch of the Velaryons continue to support Stannis even after the Blackwater. Jon Snow spots some seahorse banners when Stannis attacks Mance, so the Velaryons are holding true to their liege in a time where many of his other bannermen proved to be opportunistic. But Aurane bent the knee to Joffrey after the Blackwater, you fucking hack fraud, I hear you say. Well, mind your language. And yes, he totally did, but history has shown us that Velaryons tend not to turn their cloaks in wars. Not really, anyway. They pick their horse, and they back it until the race is over. Towards the end of the dance, Lord Corlys warned his grandson Adam that Rhaenyra was going to arrest him just because. For this, Corlys was bound, beaten, and imprisoned in the Black Cells, even though he'd been Rhaenyra's hand for the majority of the war. When Aegon the Elder retook King's Landing, Corlys was freed, pardoned, and put on the Small Council, which might seem opportunistic and turncloaky. But Corlys used his power and wealth to keep Rhaenyra's son Aegon the Younger safe, arranging for him to marry the Elder's daughter, Jaehaera. And after the Elder threatened executing the Younger, Corlys was likely behind the king's murder, ending the war and putting Rhaenyra's son on the throne. Once pardoned, Corlys ably served as one of Aegon the Younger's regents until his death. So yes, while Corlys did nominally change sides, even after being beaten and put in the Black Cells, he kept his loyalty and continued to serve the side he first declared for, going to treacherous means to do so. Velaryons throughout history have been shown to have strong convictions, so maybe, although Aurane did bend the knee to Joffrey, he might be following in his ancestors' footsteps in keeping true to his original loyalty. This theory of strong convictions might be why George has been so tight-lipped on Velaryon involvement in both the Blackfyre rebellions and in Robert's Rebellion, as it might end up giving too much away. When Cersei asks Qyburn about Aurane after she's imprisoned, in addition to Pycelle's idea that he's turned to piracy, he says, As soon as word of your grace's present troubles reached the river, Lord Waters raised sail, unshipped his oars, and took his fleet to sea. Sir Harry's fears he means to join Lord Stannis. Of course, what Harris and Qyburn meant to say was that Aurane might rejoin Stannis. It's as though they'd all forgotten who he is and where he came from. In fact, Cersei thinks of Aurane as being a Velaryon only once, and as being from Driftmark just one other time. The rest of the time, he's just Lord Waters. So if Pycelle was right about him becoming a pirate, which, he is, it would be fitting if Harris Swift is also right about him planning on going to Stannis. More to the point, in that first council meeting, which is still the best chapter, after Cersei says that she ordered Wyman Manderley to behead Davos Seaworth, Aurane jokes Stannis will be needing another hand. The Turnip Knight, perhaps. Although he is joking, great joke by the way, Aurane may actually see this as an opportunity to step in as Stannis' hand, or at least his master of ships. In any case, the jape serves to deter anyone from thinking he is loyal to Stannis, although that very possibly could always have been the case. Well, I think I've stalled the kicker for long enough now, so let's look closely at Aurane's most pivotal action in the story so far. His suggestion to build the dromonds he later absconds with. When Cersei agrees to construct these, she defaults on the crown's debt to the Iron Bank of Braavos and the Faith, saying, we'll pay it back later probably. This makes the Iron Bank fucking hate Cersei and the crown, which of course opens them up to backing Stannis. I want to take a moment to make sure we all understood what just happened there. Aurane's suggestion caused the Iron Bank to support Stannis. Without Aurane on the small council, Stannis would not have received the funds which he supposedly plans to win his war with. This completely changes the dynamic of both Stannis' campaign and Cersei's hold on the throne. Thanks, Aurane. It makes perfect sense for Aurane to betray Cersei, disappear with the new mighty royal fleet, and back his longtime liege lord. Perhaps Justin Massey will come across Aurane in Braavos and take him to Stannis. There is some weird stuff going on with a specific ship between the Stepstones and Braavos. Considering that Aurane's betrayal of Cersei seems planned and not improvised, as he did man the ships with thieves and young men, I'd say that this was his plan all along. He's not an opportunist, he's a loyalist. I know what some of you might be thinking. Lord Waters' dromons might be superfluous to King Stannis. Depending on the success of Davos' mission to Skagos, he has Lord Wyman Manderley's fleet at White Harbour, which seems to be around 40 war galleys. 10 insanely huge warships always makes a difference though, especially when we know that the only substantial fleet the Lannisters have at their disposal is busy dealing with Euron. And there's a really interesting indication that Manderley and Waters will join their fleets in the future. It's one of Patchface's classic hits that he cranks out when Jon Snow is talking about conducting a ranging to Hardhome. I will lead it. We will march into the sea and out again. Under the waves we will ride seahorses, and mermaids will blow seashells to announce our coming. Remembering that the seahorse is the sigil of House Velaryon and the mermaids are of House Manderley, riding seahorses and mermaids announcing an arrival sounds a heck of a lot like sailing on a fleet of Velaryon and Manderley ships. Mermaids blowing seashells, if taken in the same sense, suggests that the Manderleys have some message to convey that concerns the Westerlings, the House of Robb's queen. This could quite easily make complete sense, as there are two ways the Westerlings could delegitimize Bolton rule of the North. One, Jane Westerling being pregnant with Robb's heir, who would have a more legitimate claim to the North than anybody else, thus being the perfect figure for the North to rally behind. And B, Reynold Westerling having survived the Red Wedding and spreading the truth about Roose Bolton's involvement in the massacre across the North. Either of these scenarios spell clear disaster for the Boltons and carve a path of victory for Stannis. The Flints of Widow's Watch might also be a part of Patchface's cryptic song. Maybe there'll be a false flag trick involved, with Velaryon and Manderley ships disguised as Flint ships to fool the Boltons, maybe in sailing up the White Knife. It gets pretty dubious there, as we know very little about House Flint. If defecting to Stannis is Aurane's plan, the biggest problem he'll have to deal with is Stannis Baratheon's justice. As we all know, Davos Seaworth saved Storm's End during Mace Tyrell's siege, but Stannis still cleaved his fingers off for years of smuggling. It's likely that even though Aurane could play a role in saving Stannis' war effort, he would later be punished for being a pirate, or for bending the knee to Joffrey after the Blackwater. A handsome young man like Lord Waters probably wouldn't favour wearing his bones around his neck, which would be a poetic fate for him in that Gurm kind of way that we all love. On the other hand, it's likely Stannis would also reward Aurane with a desirable seat, Dragonstone maybe, which Stannis never wanted for himself. After all, Davos was also made a landed knight and given the Rainwood for his services. Going to Stannis fits with Aurane's character, his heritage, his actions, and his possible motives. My money is on Lord Waters pirating his way through the narrow sea on his way to help out his old liege lord. But, I don't have much money. AdSense doesn't pay out until you have 10,000 views. So, Aurane's first appearance was toward the end of the second book. He is scarcely mentioned amongst a list of other names, literally scrapped in with hundreds of others. He is completely insignificant. He does not appear in A Storm of Swords, only being mentioned in the appendix. Aurane's second appearance was 2 books later, where he takes on a semi-prominent role and leaves a mysterious, open-ended arc. He pops up in more than half of Cersei's chapters and seems to leave a notable impact on the story, being more than just a bit player. Clearly a huge step up from his first appearance. He does not appear in A Dance of Dragons, only being mentioned once. And here we stand on the precipice of The Winds of Winter. We've only got a handful of chapters from this book so far, but Aurane's already been alluded to once as a powerful pirate king. Another clear step up. Time and Germ will tell if Lord Waters will continue his trend of raising his own stakes in the story. I've been Glidus, and if you have been, thanks for watching. Okay, fine. Jeez, for sticking around to the end of the series, you get the most outlandish idea I could come up with. Yes, even crazier than the Euron stuff at the end of the last video. You may want to brace yourself. So, the term grey-green is used a whole bunch throughout the books, describing trees, waters, I think the sky maybe a couple of times, but the most frequent occurrence of this term, by far, is in describing the eyes of Peter Baelish. This is nothing exceptional on its own, but it just so happens that the only other character who is described as having grey-green eyes is our main man, Aurane Waters. This might be signposting that Aurane is a deeper schemer than he initially seems, which certainly seems the case given the full depth of his request to build the ships, but who knows? All we know about Aurane's direct heritage is that one of his parents was a Velaryon and that he's a bastard. Maybe there's some Braavosi blood in our Admiral, and perhaps he's related to Littlefinger some fucking how. Regardless, Peter does have a history of making nobodies at court useful to himself, especially when he's not around himself. So if Arya Stark or Justin Massey just so happened to bump into Aurane in Braavos, oh boy, the implications there are just wild.
Because of the implication.
It's going to be some Littlefinger licking goodness. Could Aurane be in league with Littlefinger? Shit.
Shit, yep.
I don't know, and I don't know why. What I do know is that Littlefinger would be poised to deliver Westeros to Stannis if he felt like it. A Stark heir, the Vale Army, Sweet Robin, Robert's Tapestries, claims across the entire Riverlands, financial sway, fuck me, dead. There were a bunch of eerie signs pointing to Littlefinger's involvement with the Iron Bank, and Stannis just threw himself in with them thanks to Aurane. But again, I don't know why. What would Littlefinger want from Stannis? Shireen? Legitimizing Elaine Stone, or setting aside Sansa's marriage to Tyrion? Harrenhal again? Regency? Is it a prophecy thing? Who shot Mr. Burns? I don't know, my TV stopped working in June of 1995. It was Flanders, yeah?
Stupid sexy Flanders!
A character being a Valyrian-Braavosi bastard is such an awesome internal contradiction that I simply do not care how implausible it is on the face of it. Anyway, tune in next time where I cover 5 easy ways to fold a tinfoil hat. You won't believe number 8! Hey, thanks for sticking around and watching this whole series. If you haven't seen the first 2 videos in this series, click on these things and do that. They're good. If you have any different ideas on what Aurane Waters is doing, please feel free to let me know. I'm always excited to hear more fucking ideas. Stick around for more of this shit. A handsome young man like Lord Waters probably wouldn't favour burying his bones around.